Chapter 57:27. Master, my mental strength is unable to leave my body, and I can't sense the situation around me. There was a rare nervousness in the young voice. Xiao He, who is usually undisciplined, could also feel the pressure brought about by the unknown environment. The feeling of not being able to see anything and not being able to hear anything was too overwhelming. Me too, Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. This situation was beyond their expectations. I wonder if the others are in the same situation as us. Bailey Hongzhuang pondered. If everyone was in the same situation, there wouldn't be any progress for the entire day. However, this wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that they didn't know if there were any other living creatures in the ancient battlefield. If they were to attack, it would be dangerous. The faint smell of blood lingered in their nostrils. This feeling made them feel extremely uncomfortable. Xiao He, can you sense any demonic beasts nearby? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Xiao He had always been very sensitive towards other demonic beasts. Not really, Xiao He replied. Master, I keep having the feeling that we're standing in the center of the battlefield and not the periphery. The ancient battlefield was so big that it was impossible for every place to be a battle zone. However, the smell of blood lingered around them, and there weren't any screams. Obviously, this was the biggest possibility. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. I have the same thoughts as you. Moreover, I can vaguely sense a strong aura around us. It's a pity that I can't see anything clearly. Master, since there's no other way, let's not be anxious. I believe that this fog will disperse eventually. Otherwise, won't we all be unable to walk out? Xiao He comforted Bailey Hongzhuang. The current situation made them feel helpless. However, they definitely couldn't let this helplessness grow. It would be very easy for them to collapse. Hearing Xiao He's comforting words, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly and stroked its furry head. It's rare for you to comfort me. Of course. Xiao He changed its usual joking expression. It grew bigger and leaned against Bailey Hongzhuang. Master, don't be afraid. I'm here. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart seemed to soften in an instant when she felt the furry warmth beside her. Usually, Xiao He was always making a fuss and was a clown. It was rare for her to be so heartwarming. However, she always knew how important she was to Xiao He. Don't be afraid. We will definitely be able to get out of here. Bailey Hongzhuang hugged Xiao He and said, the vital energy here is very dense, even denser than when we were in the outside world. If you don't know where to go, you might as well cultivate here first. However, it's filled with a murderous aura. I'll have to pay more attention to it when I cultivate. When Xiao He saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was so calm, she felt relieved. All right, let's wait and see when this fog will disperse. After making their decision, the human and beast sat down on the spot and began to cultivate peacefully. At the same time, many cultivators who had entered the ancient battlefield were in a daze. This was especially so for those who had been separated from others by a mysterious force. They were left alone and could not see the situation clearly. Chapter 57:28. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao He calmed down and focused on their cultivation, the fear and worry in their hearts gradually dissipated. However, the smell of blood that constantly wafted into their nostrils reminded them that this place was filled with the strange language and was not safe. Night slowly fell, and a thick darkness enveloped the entire world. Bailey Hongzhuang opened her eyes and saw an endless darkness. It was as if she had become blind and could not see anything. This fog is strange. It seems to have turned into a black fog at night. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. It seems that the two of us can only accept our fate. Master, it's fortunate that the two of us are still together. Think about those cultivators who appeared here alone. That's really terrible. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and could not help but ponder. I don't know if Ling, and Yinshe can find us. However, I can't sense their auras nearby. I'm afraid that they are very far away. She, Yinshe, and Ling, were telepathic. Generally speaking, as long as they were not too far away, they would be able to sense them. However, she could not sense them at all. The size of this ancient battlefield may be beyond our imagination. There's no sound at all nearby. Xiaohei looked defeated. I've never seen such a unique place. I believe that there will be a way. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed inwardly. The number of cultivators who had entered this time was unprecedented. Even so, there was not a single person in the surrounding area. If the cultivators from the mercenary guild had not entered, and only the outstanding disciples from the various large organizations had entered, it would have been even more difficult to meet them here. Bailey Hongzhuang closed her eyes and continued to cultivate. However, she had just started cultivating when she felt a strange energy invading her body along with her elemental energy. This energy was contained within her elemental energy. If she was not sensitive enough, she would not be able to detect it immediately. Xiaohei, stop cultivating for now. Master, what's wrong? Xiaohei opened her eyes when she heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words. Her voice was filled with confusion. Don't you realize that the elemental energy we cultivate now is different from when we cultivate during the day? Now that you mention it, I do feel that something is wrong. However, I can't pinpoint exactly what is wrong. Xiaohei scratched her head. After the sky turned dark, there seemed to be some changes. However, I can't sense anything different. There's a special energy that has combined with the elemental energy. Although I don't know what it is, I feel that cultivating like this is not beneficial to us. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were serious. If some strange power accidentally entered her body, it would be difficult to get out. It's not in the day, but at night. While thinking, the power of light in Bailey Hongzhuang's body suddenly spread out. The rich power of light was dazzling and bright, illuminating the black fog in front of her. With this, Bailey Hongzhuang found that the fog in front of her was indeed different. During the day, the fog was pure white. Now, although the fog was also white, it was mixed with a trace of black. It was obvious that this trace of black was not the power of darkness. Most importantly, she realized that the black in the surrounding fog was gradually dissipating after she used the power of light. Xiaohei, see if cultivating now is the same as cultivating during the day. Chapter 57:29. Xiaohei noticed the difference after this round of cultivation. Master, there's no difference between now and during the day. It's so strange. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently. She understood after seeing the changes in the fog. If I'm not wrong, this black energy should be resentment or something like that. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment before saying, this is an ancient battlefield. Although you can't see it, just from the smell of blood, you can guess that the number of cultivators who died here must be a lot. So many cultivators have perished here, and such a thick murderous aura has gathered here. It's not strange for such a situation to occur. If one cultivator had perished, the resentment might not be that serious. However, when a large number of cultivators had perished, the power gathered together would be extremely huge. I see. No wonder there wasn't such a situation during the day. Master, your light energy can eliminate this. That we can cultivate at night. That's right. The vital energy here is so dense. If most cultivators can't cultivate at night, then this is a good opportunity to improve their cultivation. Unknowingly, a month had passed. During this period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang gradually realized that the surrounding fog had become thinner. If this situation continues, we should be able to see the situation under our feet clearly in a few days' time. That's right, under their feet. Actually, they could not see anything at all. They could not even see the situation under their feet clearly. Xiaohei nodded happily. As long as we can see a little more clearly, we can go and look for everyone. They've been staying here for a while, and there was no sound around them. This made the lively Xiaohei feel extremely uncomfortable. Hold on for a few more days, and we could set off. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiaohei were conversing, a sudden breeze blew past. This was the first time Bailey Hongzhuang had felt wind since they had entered the ancient battlefield. Everything here seemed to be forbidden. Besides the difference between day and night, there was no movement at all. Even the wind had not appeared. As the wind blew past, the thick fog was blown away by the wind. With Bailey Hongzhuang as the witness, everything in front of her became clear. She could see the blue sky and white clouds. She was freed from her blind state. "Master, we can see." Xiaohei was pleasantly surprised. "This wind is so magical." "It is indeed magical." Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was a little stiff. The situation here. Sensing that her master's voice was different from usual, Xiaohei asked suspiciously, "Master, what's wrong?" After asking this question, Xiaohei could see everything clearly. Corpses. Corpses were strewn all over the ground. These corpses were all wearing armor and holding weapons. It was just like a tragic scene after a battle. It was shocking. Even though they had expected such a tragic scene to occur in the ancient battlefield, they had never expected that they would stay in the middle of the battlefield for such a long time. It was no wonder of the smell of the blood. It was no wonder that they could feel the attack of an endless amount of resentment when they were cultivating. It was no wonder that they could feel a strong pressure around them. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang understood everything. Chapter 5730. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the blood-stained ground. Even though these people were dead, they still exuded an extremely powerful aura. She was certain that this battle had taken place a long time ago, but these people's corpses had not decayed. They still looked the same as before, as if something had just happened. She had once heard Granny Hua say that when a cultivator's strength reached a certain level, they would be able to preserve their physical body from decaying. Obviously, these people had already cultivated to this level. If I'm not wrong, these people should be from the immortal domain, right? Bailey Hongzhuang's face showed a thoughtful expression. The cultivators from the upper realm can't reach this level of cultivation. Xiaohei was shocked. Doesn't that mean that everyone here can do whatever they want in the upper realm? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. That's right. These people are very strong. However, everyone in the immortal region has this level of cultivation, so they can't be considered much. I suddenly understand why this world is divided into so many planes. If they were merged together, the people at the bottom would not even be able to control their own lives. If the people from the immortal region came here, then the entire upper realm would be suppressed. Even the great aristocratic families would not be able to live as leisurely as they were now. Master, don't think so much. This place looks very strange. Let's go first. Xiaohei looked around. As a demonic beast, she had seen many battles. Even so, she could not help but feel apprehensive when she looked at the scene before her. What if someone was still alive here? Wouldn't they be done for? All right, Bailey Hongzhuang replied. She stood there without fear, only respect in her heart. After all, these were all powerful seniors. After seeing this scene, she understood more and more that the immortal region was far more powerful than they had imagined. Just as the two of them were walking forward, Xiaohei suddenly noticed a storage ring in front of her. Master, there's a storage ring there. I'm sure the cultivators from the immortal region must have many treasures on them. Xiaohei's eyes lit up, and she reached out to grab the ring. Be careful. Before Bailey Hongzhuang could remind her, Xiaohei had already retracted her hand at lightning speed. She looked at the storage ring on the ground with lingering fear and said in shock, "It's too scary." The cultivation of the experts of the immortal domain is much higher than ours. Although they're already dead, the restriction on this storage ring has not dissipated. With our cultivation, we won't be able to open this barrier at all. Most importantly, it's very likely that we'll be heavily injured by the remnant consciousness it emits. Xiaohei nodded. Before I could even touch the ring, a powerful force had already attacked me. It's really terrifying. Everything here isn't something we can touch. It's better for us to leave obediently. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. How could she not be tempted? Not only were the storage rings scattered on the ground, but even the weapons were top-notch divine weapons. If he could bring them back, the strength of the clan would definitely increase by quite a bit. Unfortunately, when she had sensed the difference in power between them, she knew that she would not be able to bring them back. Xiaohei turned to look at her surroundings. She had been so shocked that she had not paid much attention to her surroundings. Now that she had taken a closer look, she realized that there were so many treasures scattered on the ground. Chapter 57:31. Don't think about it. These are not things that we can touch. Let's hurry up and leave. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was calm. She knew very well that she should not think too much about things that did not belong to her. Her little life was the most important thing. Forget about them. Even the master would not be able to take away the things here. Furthermore, these things had been affected by resentment and blood over the years and were no longer as pure as before. If they were to lose their little lives because of this, it would not be worth it at all. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Xiao He nodded helplessly. It had always been a money grubber. Seeing that it had missed out on so many treasures, it was heartbroken. Noticing Xiao He's heartbroken look, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but chuckle. This fellow had been a money grubber ever since she had first met it. It had not changed at all even after such a long time. The woman and the beast walked forward. This battlefield was huge, and the number of cultivators who had died here was even more shocking. As they walked, they tried their best to avoid it. After leaving the battlefield, Bailey Hongzhuang stopped. She respectfully bowed to the front. "Seniors, I have offended you before. I hope that the seniors will forgive me." They had stayed here for an entire month. Now that they thought about it, their hearts were filled with lingering fear. Just thinking about it was enough to make them shiver. If they were timid, they would have vomited on the spot. "Master, where should we go now?" Xiao He looked around and saw a vast and boundless grassland. The battlefield was extremely spacious, and their field of vision was extremely wide as well. It was obvious that there were no other cultivators near them. Bailey Hongzhuang paused, and her bright, pitch-black eyes flickered with a light of deep thought. "Let's walk in this direction first. When we meet other cultivators, we'll be able to understand the situation here better." At this moment, she did not have any understanding of the ancient battlefield. Even though she had been here for a month, it was as if she had just arrived today. In the past, when she was in the Immortal Cloud's secret realm, she was always worried that she would encounter other cultivators and cause conflicts. However, now that she was here, she really hoped that she would be able to meet other cultivators as soon as possible. There were no living creatures in the surroundings, and there was an indescribable feeling everywhere. It was really unsettling. Xiao He did not have any objections to this. In its opinion, it was the same no matter which direction they went. As long as he could reunite with everyone as soon as possible, that would be the best. A man and a beast walked on the grass. The sun shone on their bodies, casting long shadows on their backs. At the same time, the situation of the other cultivators who had entered the ancient battlefield was similar. Bewitching and Xiao Bai walked forward. There was nothing but grass in sight. This place is really strange. The fog didn't disperse earlier, but now it's gone. Xiao Bai sighed. Bewitching nodded. "I also feel that this place is different from the secret realms that we've been to before. It's a little bit creepier. Let's not talk about anything else. The most important thing now is to find Hongzhuang. I really don't understand why these places always move in and scatter everyone." Little White sighed. This kind of situation really made people feel helpless. Chapter 57:32. After seeing the incomparably shocking battlefield, this feeling lingered in his heart. There was an indescribable strangeness everywhere. His father's previous judgment was correct. The danger level of this place was indeed much higher than before. Most importantly, even if he saw many treasures, he could not get his hands on them at all. The cultivators who had died were too terrifying. They were unimaginably powerful. He was almost certain that many cultivators would be at a disadvantage in this matter. If they were not careful, they would lose their lives here. I wonder if the souls of these cultivators still exist after they died. If they still exist, wouldn't it be easy for the cultivators who came in to be possessed? This was the question that had been lingering in his heart since he walked out of the battlefield. Possession was a technique used by some powerhouses. By devouring the other party's soul, they could occupy the other party's body and survive in another way. With the cultivation of these powerhouses, the cultivators in the upper realm could not resist at all. Most importantly, if these people succeeded in seizing his body, then the upper realm would probably be turned upside down. Back then, only 2 cultivators entered the lower realm and almost caused a catastrophe. If so many powerhouses suddenly appeared in the upper realm, the scene was simply unimaginable. At this moment, he felt that the ancient battlefield's appearance was not a good thing. On the contrary, it was full of danger. Xiaobai naturally understood Bewitching's concern. It also had its own concerns about this. Master, I feel that this battlefield has existed for a very long time. Even the soul of an expert will gradually wither away without a vessel. The possibility of such a thing happening should be relatively small. I hope so. Bewitching sighed. How could he not know this? However, he could not help but be worried. I don't understand. Why would the entrance to the immortal region's battlefield appear in the upper realm? This was what he could not figure out the most. I don't know. Xiaobai shook its head. Master, since these people are so powerful, we can't get anything at all. On one hand, they entered the ancient battlefield to explore. On the other hand, they hoped to gain something. However, they did see many treasures, but they could not take them. Since the cultivators here all came from the celestial realm, it was clear that they wouldn't be able to obtain all the treasures here. Wouldn't that be a waste of time? Now that we're in, even finding the exit is extremely difficult. We can only continue forward. In fact, just as Bewitching had guessed, many cultivators had lost their lives while fighting for the treasures. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiaohei walked for a day and a night, the murderous aura finally weakened a little. In fact, Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't have been able to withstand the killing intent if it weren't for her blood chi field and killing chi field. The murderous aura that had been formed over the years was simply too fierce and overbearing. If one stayed there for too long, one's mind would be affected. Fortunately, Bailey Hongzhuang was of the light attribute, and her light energy was able to disperse this influence. Otherwise, if an ordinary person were to cultivate there for a month, they would definitely leave behind problems. The killing intent is finally fading. Earlier, I felt that my body was stiff. Now, I feel much better. Chapter 5733. 3 days later, the scenery in front of them finally changed. In front of them was a lush forest. However, there were no animals here. It was as if everything was still. Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiaohei ate their rations as they walked. The area here was extraordinarily large. It took them such a long time to walk through just a patch of grass. Most importantly, until now, they had not met a single person. It's so strange here. There aren't any living things here. Xiaohei could not help but say, I used to worry that there would be demonic beasts in the forest. I don't have to worry here, but I'm looking forward to seeing a living thing. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Her thoughts were the same as Xiaohei's. This situation was just too strange. Since so many people have come this time, we'll definitely meet others if we keep walking. Suddenly, Bailey Hongzhuang noticed a patch of dazzling red in front of them. It was reflecting a bright and resplendent light under the sunlight. What's that? Bailey Hongzhuang looked in front of her suspiciously. A patch of red appeared on the ground. It was obviously not blood. Xiaohei's eyes lit up. Master, let's go and take a look. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. She immediately increased her speed and rushed forward. Wow! Xiaohei looked at everything in front of her and could not help but cry out in surprise. Pieces of crystals appeared on the ground. The crystals were red in color and shone brightly under the sunlight. They were as dazzling as rubies. It's so beautiful. The stones on the ground were sparkling. Xiaohei's eyes were also sparkling. It was just too beautiful. It was like a work of art. One look and one would like it. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the red crystals in front of her. She was also stunned for a moment. This time, neither she nor Xiaohei immediately reached out to take them. The previous situation had already taught them a lesson. Bailey Hongzhuang squatted down and carefully examined the crystals on the ground. She could feel an extremely dense and pure power emanating from the golden stone. After thinking for a moment, she stretched out her hand. Master, Xiaohei could not help but call out. Bailey Hongzhuang picked up the crystal and the situation she was worried about did not happen, so she was relieved. Xiaohei, this seems to be a spirit stone. Bailey Hongzhuang was surprised. She was very familiar with spirit stones. He often used spirit stones for his daily cultivation, but the blood spirit stone in his hand was purer and denser than the one he used for his daily cultivation. Even a high-grade spirit stone would not be able to compare to it. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Xiaohei also picked up the blood spirit stone. After carefully sensing it, she said in surprise, "That's right, this should be a spirit stone. I didn't expect there to be such a spirit stone above high-grade spirit stones. If I use this spirit stone to cultivate, my cultivation speed will be much faster." Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes rippled with joy. This was probably their biggest gain since coming here. "But master, why are these spirit stones red?" Xiaohei was puzzled. She could not help but think of the previous battle. Could these spirit stones have been stained red by blood? Xiaohei could not help but tremble when she thought of this. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head with certainty. These spirit stones were not stained red by blood. They were originally like this. Chapter 5734. Upon hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's affirmation, Xiaohei's expression relaxed a little. Ever since she had arrived at this strange, ancient battlefield, she had a different view of the color red. If these spirit stones were really related to fresh blood, even if the effects were extremely good, she could not help but feel a knot in her heart. In that case, these are all treasures that can help with cultivation. Xiaohei's interest was immediately piqued. They had been in the ancient battlefield for an entire month. In this 1 month, not only had they not gained anything, they had also stayed in that unbelievable environment for an entire month. If they did not have anything to encourage them, they would not be able to go on. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently. "Let's quickly keep these blood spirit stones. If other cultivators come, there might be a fight." However, when Bailey Hongzhuang said this, Xiaohei could not wait to start moving. As a money grubber, her hands and feet were the fastest at times like this. In the process of picking up the blood spirit stones, Bailey Hongzhuang was shocked to find that the spirit stones that she had seen earlier were only the parts that were exposed. There were even more blood spirit stones buried underground. Heavens, there are actually so many blood spirit stones here. Could this be a spirit stone mine? Xiaohei's face was full of shock, but the corners of her lips could not help but curl up. "Master, does this mean that we've struck gold?" "Yes." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. "If we use these spirit stones to cultivate, our cultivation speed will be much faster than before. If we really find a spirit stone mine, we might as well bring all these things back." "Master, you're very greedy too," Xiaohei teased, but her hands moved faster and faster. With so many spirit stones, it was obvious that they would not be able to collect them all in a short period of time. In order to avoid any possible risks, it was best for them to pick up their pace. In the past, one person could eat his fill and the whole family would not go hungry. Now that the situation is different, we have to be greedy. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged her shoulders. The appearance of the ancient battlefield this time made her feel uneasy. She was most worried that a remnant spirit would take over their body. If such a thing really happened, the entire family would be threatened. Moreover, Shu Yu's appearance had already made them very worried. With these blood spirit stones, although the family head could not immediately catch up to Shu Yu's strength, it could at least shorten the gap between them. As long as there was some resistance, the situation would not become so bad. When the man and the beast were tired, they simply sat on the ground and pretended to be tired. Time gradually passed, but the man and the beast did not feel tired at all. These were treasures that could not be obtained even if one fought for them on a daily basis. Now that they were allowed to pick them up as they pleased, they could only hope that there were as many as possible. After all, there was a limit to the number of blood spirit stones. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiaohei dug up the ground and discovered that there were no more blood spirit stones, they continued to move forward. "Master, do you think there will be blood spirit stones scattered in other places like this?" Xiaohei looked at the blood spirit stone in its hand. It could also feel the pure elemental energy within it. Thinking back to the first time it used a high-grade blood spirit stone, its eyes lit up. Pure elemental energy did not need to be purified. It could be absorbed. However, this blood spirit stone did not need to be actively absorbed. The elemental energy would continuously flow into its body and strengthen it. Chapter 5735. Bailey Hongzhuang also held the blood spirit stone and felt that this thing was really mysterious. The demon summoning scripture automatically circulated, and the blood spirit stone's energy continuously flowed into her body. She could clearly feel the spirit energy in her body growing stronger. Now that she was here, everything was a bit strange. Aside from aimlessly looking for others, she didn't know what to do. Now that she had the blood spirit stone, she could cultivate as she walked. Not only was she not wasting time, but her cultivation speed was also faster than if she were to meditate. Master, I feel that if I continue to cultivate like this, I'm afraid I'll break through to the radiant moon realm soon. The spirit energy in this blood spirit stone is very pure. Try to suppress it as much as possible. Granny Hua's words can't be wrong. The last time I saw Jun Lingxuan, I noticed that he was already at the 9th stage nebula realm. After that, Nangong Yuqing broke through, but Jun Lingxuan still hadn't broken through. At that time, I felt that Jun Lingxuan's expression was a bit strange. But now that I think about it, maybe Shu Yu also knew about this, so she had them suppress their breakthrough speed. Her clear black and white eyes rippled with a pondering light. Previously, she hadn't thought about this point, but now that she thought about it, she felt that the possibility was very high. Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou are really lucky to have found such a diligent master. Xiao He angrily said, but I say, this Shu Yu really doesn't have good eyesight. There's so many disciples out there, but she chose the 2 of them. It's their own destiny. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. Speaking of which, they were able to meet Granny Hua and the other seniors. Their destiny was also very good. As they walked, a sound suddenly rang in Bailey Hongzhuang's ears. It was the pleasant sound of string music. It was like the tinkling of spring water, like the flowing of a mountain. In this exceptionally quiet environment, it was abnormally clear. There's a sound in front. Bailey Hongzhuang was surprised. After grasping the 4 arts, she had done some research on zither music. This music was so pleasant to the ear, and the person playing it was clearly immersed in it for many years. Master, why is there music all of a sudden? Isn't it a little strange? Xiao He was puzzled. Ever since they entered the ancient battlefield, they had not heard any other sounds other than their own. Now that such a voice had suddenly appeared, it was simply too strange. Indeed, no one should be in the mood to play music here. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. But let's go take a look. What if someone wants to use this music to find someone? Even though the possibility was slim, Bailey Hongzhuang was still unwilling to give up. If other people could also hear this voice, they might take advantage of this opportunity to meet Beichen. Then let's go and take a look, Xiao He replied. The 2 of them walked in the direction of the music. However, although the music sounded very close, as if it was not far from them, after walking for a long time, the man and the beast still could not find the source of the sound. How far is this sound from us? Why haven't we found it after walking for so long? Xiao He slowed down. It was exhausted after such a long journey. Chapter 5736. Xiao He, I think we shouldn't be in a hurry to find them. Let's just go with the flow and head in that direction. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was calm. I feel that this sound isn't just calling out to us. Others should have heard it as well. Since that's the case, it's not a bad thing to arrive a little later. We might run into familiar faces. Then, Master, don't you think that the appearance of this sound is very strange? Xiao He asked doubtfully. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. It's very strange indeed. If I'm not wrong, this sound definitely doesn't come from the cultivators who entered this time. They don't have such strength at all. To be able to hear the music so clearly from such a long distance, It must be some senior from the immortal region who hasn't died yet. Or perhaps there's some other treasure that's spreading the sound. In any case, we have to be careful when we get there. If it's an old monster who hasn't died after so many years and stays in a place with such dense elemental energy to cultivate every day, then its cultivation level must be beyond our imagination. A hint of fear flashed across Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. If she didn't want to use this opportunity to meet up with everyone, she really wouldn't be interested in the origin of this sound at all. Even if there were any treasures, it would be too difficult to obtain them. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang had already made a judgment in her heart, Xiao He also relaxed. This sound is very special. I wonder where it's coming from. Bailey Yin Che's gaze turned to the endless grassland in front of them. Ling glanced at Bailey Yin Che. Let's follow this sound. Perhaps we can find Hongzhuang. We've been here for so long, but apart from you, we haven't seen anyone else. You're from the immortal region after all. Do you know anything about this situation? Bailey Yin Che asked. Linger shook her head. Unless I can break through to the radiant moon realm and break the seal, I'm afraid I won't be able to remember anything. Actually, it's good that you're like this. We have to put in a lot of effort to suppress it in order to not break through to the radiant moon realm. You don't have to worry about that at all, Bailey Yin Che joked with a smile. Linger narrowed her eyes and stared at Bailey Yin Che. Are you asking for a beating? Bailey Yin Che chuckled. My cultivation is no weaker than yours now. Gone are the days when you could bully me one-sidedly. Linger was furious. Just as she was about to flare up, she heard Bailey Yin Che say, You should be more open-minded. Didn't they say that the longer you suppress it, the stronger your combat power will be after you break through? Perhaps this is an opportunity given to you by God. Everything has its own arrangement. You don't have to keep thinking about it. Linger's tightly clenched fists slowly relaxed. Her expression was a little unnatural. She didn't think that the guy who always deserved a beating would suddenly comfort her. She was really not used to it. Stop acting like you know everything. Linger pursed her lips. Let's hurry up and leave. Don't delay any longer. With the help of the Blood Spirit Stone, Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao He accumulated their origin power at an extremely fast rate. Bailey Hongzhuang vaguely felt that she wasn't far from Zhongli Mu's cultivation base. Now, she had to stop cultivating every once in a while. Otherwise, she would break through if she wasn't careful. This was the first time the origin power in her body had been so abundant. It was as if it would overflow at any moment. After traveling for 7 days, she finally felt that she was a little closer to this voice. Bang, bang, bang. Chapter 5737. It seems like someone is fighting. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. After walking for so long, they finally met a living person. Master, we finally met someone. Xiao He was pleasantly surprised. If they did not meet a person soon, they would feel like they were abandoned by the world. The human and the beast immediately sped up and rushed forward. Their footsteps were extremely light to avoid being discovered by the other party. When they got closer, the two of them finally saw the situation in front of them clearly. However, after seeing one of them, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but be shocked. It's Jiang Wenyan. In their line of sight, the three of them were entangled in a fight. The other two were obviously a pair. Jiang Wenyan's cultivation was at Nebula rank 9. What was surprising was that the other two were also at Nebula rank 9. However, Jiang Wenyan's combat power was obviously stronger than the other two. That was why he was able to resist. The two of them were not simple. Even though Jiang Wenyan tried his best to resist, he was still at a disadvantage. Based on the current situation, Jiang Wenyan would be defeated by the two of them soon. Jiang Wenyan quickly handed over the item. Perhaps we can spare your life, the man said coldly. Jiang Wenyan sneered. Han Bowen, do you think I'm so naive? If I really hand it over to you, I'm afraid I'll die even faster. Han Bowen's face turned cold. He knew that his words were not convincing. So what if you see through it? You'll die by my hand sooner or later. Until the end, who can be sure of the result? Blood flowed from the corner of Jiang Wenyan's lips. His face was extremely pale, but his gaze was still determined. From the moment he entered the ancient battlefield, he was already prepared to die at any time. However, he would do his best. He would not give up until the very end. You're really stubborn. Han Bowen looked at Jiang Wenyin nonchalantly. Putting everything else aside, I admire you. It's a pity that you're still an opponent. Why do you have to say such nonsense? Jiang Wenyin's gaze became cold and ruthless. To him, as long as he was an opponent, he would not rest until he was dead. Even if he had to risk his life, he would not let his opponent have an easy time. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but sigh as she looked at Jiang Wenyin, who was seriously injured but abnormally determined. Usually, when she saw Jiang Wenyin, he always had a calm and gentle appearance, like a piece of warm jade. She didn't expect that there would be such a side to him under that gentleness. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang flashed and appeared beside Jiang Wenyin. Jiang Wenyin, long time no see. The sudden appearance of the figure stunned the three of them. When Jiang Wenyin saw that it was Bailey Hongzhuang, his dark eyes were instantly dyed with a trace of hope. Previously, he had already determined that he would lose his life here today, but he did not expect that things would actually take a turn for the better. Hongzhuang, Jiang Wenyin was surprised. You happen to be nearby? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. I kept hearing a strange sound, so I came here to take a look, wondering if I could meet someone I knew. I didn't expect to really meet someone. Han Bowen's expression changed when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang. The Saint of Light. That's right, it's me. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her chin and curled the corners of her lips into an enchanting angle. Han Bowen and Bailey Hongzhuang looked at each other, and a trace of fear appeared on their faces. Who would have thought that another person would appear at a time like this? Chapter 5738. Holy Lady of Light, this is a grudge between the four of us. I have no intention of offending you, and I hope you won't interfere. Han Bowen had a complicated look on his face. Not to mention Bailey Hongzhuang's identity as the Holy Lady of Light, she was already a very difficult opponent to deal with. She came from a humble background, but managed to defeat the genius, Xiao Sou. She was considered a shining star among the younger generation. Offending her was not a good thing at all. That's great. You can leave now, and I can pretend that nothing happened. How about that? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows, and the smile on her lips was extremely amiable. Once she said that, Han Bowen and the other man looked at each other. A look of struggle flashed across their eyes. As long as Jiang Wenyin gives us the item, we'll leave immediately. Clang! Unsheathing her sword, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes sharpened. It seems that there's no room for discussion. If you want this item, we can share it with you. Han Bowen spoke again. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. There are two of you and Jiang Wenyin alone. You're willing to share it with me, but I'm not willing to share it with you. Han Bowen was stunned. His face was as dark as water as he gritted his teeth and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Don't you go too far. You bullied my friend first, and now you're asking me not to go too far. Bailey Hongzhuang took a step forward and pointed the thought-severing sword at Han Bowen. Seeing that there was no other way to ease the situation, Han Bowen and the other man made up their minds and attacked Bailey Hongzhuang together. In the outside world, attacking the Holy Lady of Light was indeed courting death. However, in the ancient battlefield, as long as the other party was dead, no one would know about it. On the other hand, if they got what they wanted, they might be able to improve greatly. Wealth comes from danger. They could only fight. Bailey Hongzhuang was not surprised by their decision. She turned to look at Jiang Wenyin. It seems that we'll have to fight side by side. I've dragged you into this. Jiang Wenyin was a little apologetic. Since we're friends, there's no such thing as dragging me down. Back then, no one was optimistic about me, but you still stood on my side. Bailey Hongzhuang, only look at sincerity when making friends. Once we become friends, we will entrust our lives to each other. Her ink-black phoenix eyes were filled with seriousness and sincerity. It was a kind of trust that came from the bottom of her heart. Jiang Wenyin's heart skipped a beat. Touched emotions spread through his heart, and his gaze became even more resolute. What a great line. Then I won't waste any more words. Let's fight. Bailey Hongzhuang's figure flashed and met Han Bowen's attack. Ding, ding, ding. The sharp swords collided, and sword chi burst out. The sharp sword chi seemed to be able to pierce through everything. Numerous gullies were formed on the ground. The two of them moved as fast as lightning. The power of light and the power of fire clashed. The raging flames dyed Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes red. The scorching temperature caused the surrounding air to churn. Bailey Hongzhuang activated her killing aura field, and a dense killing intent burst out. Swoosh! The terrifying killing intent stunned Han Bowen. Taking advantage of an opening, Bailey Hongzhuang's sharp sword stabbed out. Hiss! A muffled sound was heard. Han Bowen's abdomen had been stabbed. She's so powerful. Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, Han Bowen quickly called for his teammates to escape. Bailey Hongzhuang did not expect Han Bowen to escape so quickly. By the time she wanted to chase after him, it was already too late. Chapter 5739. When Jiang Wenyin saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had chased the other party away, he was a little surprised. He had some understanding of Han Bowen. This guy was definitely not someone who would give up easily. However, he had left so decisively. It could be seen that even if it was just a face-to-face encounter, he had clearly felt that he was not Bailey Hongzhuang's opponent. It was because of this that he left decisively. They were both Nebula rank 9, but he was unable to make the other party retreat. Could it be that Hongzhuang's battle power was actually that strong? How are you? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Jiang Wenyin with concern. She had already noticed that Jiang Wenyin had vomited blood. It could be seen that his injuries were not light. Jiang Wenyin waved his hand. It's fine. I have already consumed the elixir. It will not take long for me to recover. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and asked, have you met any other cultivators before? No. Jiang Wenyin sat on the ground. After the previous battle, he was really tired. After I came to this ancient battlefield, I was trapped in the fog for a month. It was only a while ago that I started to wander around. Other than Han Bowen and Han Bowen, you are the third person I have met. Then we are considered to be fated. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. This place is so big. After walking for so many days, you only met a few people, and you met me. You also saved my life. Otherwise, I would have lost my life here today. Jiang Wenyin sighed. He was really lucky today. This means that your life is not meant to end. However, we have to be careful in this place. At least the two of us should be safer. Saying this, Jiang Wenyin could not help but ask, aren't you curious about what Han Bowen and the rest wanted to take away? If it was an ordinary person, they would have already asked when Han Bowen and the rest were here. However, until now, Bailey Hongzhuang had not mentioned it. He was also a little stunned. That is your thing. If you want to say it, then say it. If you don't want to say it, then forget it. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged. She had always trusted her friends. If the other party was not willing to say it, she would not ask. The Saintess of the Light is indeed worthy of her reputation. Jiang Wenyin's eyes were serious. In the past, I only thought that you were able to beat Xiao So because of your talent. But now, it seems that other than your talent, you are different in many other aspects. You're not flattering me, right? Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly asked. Ha! Jiang Wenyin laughed heartily. This is a compliment to you. Bowen, how are your injuries? Han Bowen shook his head. I'm fine. It's not that serious. I just need to find a place to rest for a few days. You know that thing is not simple. Why did you give up so quickly? The man frowned. He was unwilling to give up just like that. The rumors outside are not wrong. Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation is very strong. Even if we are both Nebula 9th stage, her strength far surpasses mine. Han Bowen still had lingering fears. Even though they had only fought for a short period of time, he could still feel the terrifying gap between them. At first, he also wanted to test Bailey Hongzhuang's strength, but he found that the other party was unfathomable. After he used his full strength, Bailey Hongzhuang was still able to easily deal with him. From that moment on, he knew the difference in strength between the two of them. Moreover, Bailey Hongzhuang still had many mysterious methods. Once she used them, they might not even have the chance to escape. Chapter 5740. Is this woman's talent really that strong? The man was in disbelief. Although there were many rumors about Bailey Hongzhuang, and he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was not weak, he still felt that it was exaggerated because of the halo of the Saint of Light. Now that Han Bowen had said this, he realized that he might have thought too simply. Han Bowen nodded fearfully. She's really strong. It seems that Bewitching's strength is also very terrifying. No wonder Xiao Souwu and Jun Lingxuan were defeated by them. These two people really can't be judged by common sense. Then what should we do? Don't we want that thing? The man was depressed. Even though they were not sure what kind of treasure it was, they had stayed in the ancient battlefield for so long and had not gained anything. Something that was hard to come by would definitely not be simple. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang and Jiang Wenyin are together, we don't have a chance for now. However, we can wait for the right time. Maybe there will be a turn for the better later. After Jiang Wenyin healed himself, he said, "Even if you're not curious, I have to tell you that half of this thing is already yours. There's no need for that." Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand and smiled. Jiang Wenyin took out the item and said, "I didn't gain anything along the way until I found a cave. The cave was actually empty. I wanted to use it as a temporary shelter, but I accidentally found a map inside." A map? Bailey Hongzhuang was shocked. A map of the ancient battlefield. I had just found this map when Han Bowen and the rest appeared. I didn't have the time to look at it carefully. If it's really a map of the ancient battlefield, you're in luck. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. They were completely in the dark when they came here. If they had a map, they would not be running around like they were now. Jiang Wenyin opened the map and looked at it together with Bailey Hongzhuang. With this, the two of them connected the situation marked on the map with the situation they had encountered along the way and found their current location. It really is the map of the ancient battlefield. Jiang Wenyin was also a little surprised. Although he had already guessed this before, he did not expect it to go so smoothly. I wonder which senior is so powerful to be able to draw a map of the ancient battlefield. Bailey Hongzhuang was deep in thought. According to the map, the scope of the entire ancient battlefield was almost beyond their imagination. During this period of time, she felt that the distance she had traveled was not short, but it was only a very small area on the map. It should be the seniors who fought here. They have the map and have been to that cave. I was lucky enough to pick up the map. Jiang Wenyin's face lit up. Because he didn't know anything during this period of time, he really didn't feel good. Now that he had a guiding light, he felt much more at ease. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and carefully checked the situation on the map. She pointed to a place with a musical pattern and said, "Is this place the source of the music?" Jiang Wenyin took a closer look and replied, "It's very likely. Why don't we go over there and take a look?" Chapter 5741. Han Bowen and the rest will probably follow this sound and move forward. If they spread the news, I'm afraid that we'll be in trouble. Jiang Wenyin furrowed his brows. This was the most worrying problem during training. It's nothing much, it's just a map. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and smiled slyly. Can't we just draw another one? Jiang Wenyin immediately understood when he noticed her expression. Good idea. Everyone knew nothing about the ancient battlefield now. No one could tell if the map they drew was real or fake. After they finished drawing the map, the two of them walked towards their destination. The sound was still very far away. If she had not seen the map, Bailey Hongzhuang would have thought of giving up as she walked. However, now that she knew the approximate distance, she did not think too much about it. Everything was just as they had expected. Many cultivators rushed over when they heard the sound. As they got closer to the source of the sound, the number of cultivators they met also increased. However, everyone was focused on reaching their destination as soon as possible. Hence, they did not have any other thoughts. In reality, all the cultivators who knew each other understood that they had not gained anything during this period of time. On the contrary, the real treasure could only be found in the direction of the sound. It looks like we're not too early. Someone should have arrived by now. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the increasing number of figures in front of her. Unfortunately, she did not meet anyone she knew. Since the sound hasn't disappeared, it proves that the item has not been taken away. However, let's speed up. If it really is a treasure, it would be a pity to miss it. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently. She unleashed her movement skills to the maximum and rushed forward at lightning speed. Xiaohei, I can sense Yin Che and Ling Er's auras. Really? Xiaohei was elated. It looks like they're rushing over here too. Her round and bright eyes were smiling. She was used to moving around with everyone. It was not strange for them to be separated. Sister, Hongzhuang. Suddenly, two familiar voices sounded. Bailey Hongzhuang turned around and saw Bailey Yin Che and Ling. I finally met you. Bailey Hongzhuang stopped and said happily. We've been hoping to find you sooner. It's all thanks to this sound. Otherwise, this place is so big. We really don't know when we'll bump into you. Bailey Yin Che's already enchanting face became even more enchanting after he smiled. Even Jiang Wenyin, who was also a man, couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. Fortunately, he smiled at us. If he smiled at a lady, I'm afraid he would have to rely on you in the future. Bailey Yin Che chuckled. Looks like you've been through a lot of situations like this, haven't you? I'm talking about you. Don't worry. I'm not as wealthy as you. I won't be so attractive. Bailey Yin Che waved his hand and smiled. Sister, didn't you see brother-in-law? Chapter 5742. Judging from a map, the sound did not come from the center of the ancient battlefield. If some of the cultivators were on the other side of the ancient battlefield, it would be impossible for them to make it here. Let's go to the front and take a look. It would be great if we could see brother-in-law and the rest earlier, Bailey Yin Che said. This place is strange. It would be safer to meet up earlier. All right, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. She also felt strange about the ancient battlefield that had suddenly appeared. Everyone sped up and realized that there were more and more cultivators around them. However, every cultivator was moving forward at lightning speed. If they were not familiar with the place, they would only feel a gust of wind and they would not be able to see each other's figures clearly. After traveling for a while, everyone finally arrived at the source of the sound. However, when they saw the figures in front of them clearly, they could not help but exclaim, "Oh my God, there are so many people here." Xiaohei was shocked. Even though she had guessed that there were quite a number of cultivators here, the number was too shocking. In their line of sight, there were many cultivators surrounding the front. The scene reminded them of the grand occasion at the entrance of the ancient battlefield. Although the scale was not as big as before, because only a portion of the cultivators had entered, the encirclement was not as big as the entrance. Hence, it did not seem much different from before. There are so many people surrounding us. We can't even see the situation in front of us clearly. Ling frowned. I wonder what's in front of us. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. At that moment, she was not in a hurry to check the situation in front of them. There were so many cultivators gathered here, but the treasure had not been taken away. It could be seen that it was quite difficult. On the contrary, she was more anxious to find Bewitching in the crowd. Bailey Hongzhuang's line of sight turned slightly, and with just a glance, she saw a familiar figure. As if he felt the gaze behind him, the figure turned around. The moment he saw Bailey Hongzhuang, a dazzling smile bloomed on his handsome face. Hongzhuang. Bewitching walked out of the crowd and quickly walked to Bailey Hongzhuang. He held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand familiarly and said, I finally meet you. Even with Hongzhuang's ability, he believed that there shouldn't be any problems during this period of time, but he still couldn't help but worry about her. Bailey Hongzhuang took a few steps forward. Her beautiful face was as bright as the sun, and her bright eyes were clearly filled with surprise. Beichen, you really are here. Beichen looked around and saw that Bailey Yin Che, Ling and Jiang Wenyin were all there. His smile became even brighter. It's great that you're all here. From the looks of it, most of us have already gathered here, except for a few who haven't arrived yet. But maybe we'll see them after a while. Who hasn't arrived yet? Big Brother, Yin Ju, Yun Yin, and a few other family disciples haven't arrived yet. Then Xiren and Yingying have already arrived? Bailey Hongzhuang looked in front of her in confusion. She clearly didn't see the two of them. Di Beichen chuckled. Turn around and take a look. Chapter 5743. Haha, it's great to see all of you. Before they got close, Shangwan Yingying's surprised voice could be heard. This time, our meeting was really smooth. It's all thanks to this sound. When Xiren also spoke. Previously, when they were out for training, it was extremely difficult to meet up. However, this time, after they could move, they met up very quickly. Oh yeah, Beichun, what's the situation in front? Jiang Wenyin couldn't help but ask. Di Beichun suddenly understood. There's a lake in front, and there's a pavilion in the middle of the lake. The sound came from the pavilion. However, until now, no one has been able to cross the lake and walk to the pavilion. Hearing that, Jiang Wenyin was shocked. Why is that? This lake is very magical. Cultivators can't fly over it at all. On top of that, there's a very sharp metal attribute power in the lake. Once a cultivator enters it, he won't be able to resist and will be pierced into a sieve. Since I came here, many cultivators have tried. Unfortunately, the results are, everyone looked at each other. They didn't expect the situation to be so difficult. This ancient battlefield is strange everywhere. Even if we want to get a treasure, the difficulty level seems to be higher than before. Shangwan Yingying looked defeated. You don't know. When I was trapped in the fog, I was actually in the middle of the battlefield. When I saw everything clearly, I was almost scared to death. This is the first time in my life that I've had such an experience. Just thinking about it makes me feel unbearable. As she spoke, Shangwan Yingying couldn't help but shiver, as though she wanted to get rid of the creepy feeling. Hearing what Shangwan Yingying said, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh. I didn't expect our situation to be so similar. You the same? Shangwan Yingying was shocked. I thought I was the only one who was so unlucky. Don't worry, you're not the only one. Bailey Hongzhuang was helpless. It seems that there's more than one place where the battle happened in this ancient battlefield. Originally, he thought that he was in the middle of the battle. Now, it seemed that there were many such situations in the ancient battlefield. Thinking about it carefully, this was a little strange. Although this region wasn't small, the size of the entire Immortal Realms was even larger. Even if there were battles, it was impossible for them to gather so densely in one place. Could it be that this place was specially used for fighting? Looking at the confused look of Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen smiled as he held her hand. Wife, don't worry about it. The most important thing now is to get the treasure in the pavilion in the middle of the lake. That's right. When Xiren nodded, let's go and take a look. I feel that this place is so mysterious. The treasures must not be simple. Although this is a good opportunity for you and Yingying to perform. What do you mean? Both you and Yingying are of the metal attribute. Many people have tried it before, and they found that cultivators of the metal attribute would experience less resistance in the lake. Not only that, but because the metal element in the lake is extremely pure, you might even be able to gain some inspiration. If you can reach the pavilion in the middle of the lake, this treasure will be yours. Chapter 5744. When Xiren excitedly walked towards the pavilion in the middle of the lake, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest followed closely behind. The crowd that had surrounded the pavilion so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through quietly made way for them when they saw Di Beichun and the rest. It was only when they got closer that Bailey Hongzhuang could clearly see the pavilion in the middle of the lake. There was a lake in front of them. The lake was not very big, only a few hundred meters in diameter. The water was clear and rippled as a gentle breeze blew. However, at this moment, the clear lake water was stained with a few traces of bright red. Everyone could see that the corpse that had fallen in the lake water had long been pierced full of holes by the metal-type energy. The bright red spots made the calm lake water look even more demonic. In the middle of the lake, a red pavilion stood quietly. The pavilion was surrounded by red curtains. When the breeze blew, the curtains fluttered in the wind. It was a magnificent sight. Looking at the exquisite and strange pavilion in the middle of the lake, a scene appeared in everyone's mind. It was a peerless beauty in a red dress. She was playing a melodious zither in the pavilion in the middle of the lake. The sound of the zither drifted in the air and moved everyone's hearts. However, this peerless beauty had disappeared. It was hard not to feel nostalgic. There seems to be something on the table in the middle of the lake. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell on the pavilion in the middle of the lake. She could not see it clearly when the curtains were covering it. However, when the wind blew, the curtains fluttered open. She clearly noticed that there was a golden object on the table in the middle of the lake. Bewitching nodded slightly. That's right. Everyone noticed this earlier. According to everyone's guess, this golden object must be a metal-type treasure. The lake water has always had such powerful metal-type energy. It must be related to the object in the middle of the lake. The owner of the pavilion must be a metal-type expert. As he spoke, Bewitching looked at Xiren and Shangwaning. That thing will definitely be of great help to metal-type cultivators. Who knows, we might even be able to obtain the inheritance of this expert when we arrive there. With Bewitching's words, Xiren and Shangwaning understood that this was an excellent opportunity for them. However, whether or not they could grasp the opportunity would depend on their own strength. Just as everyone was talking, there were cultivators who couldn't suppress their inner desires and tried to enter the lake. One and Xiren were not in a hurry. They only paid close attention to the situation of the other party entering the lake. After the cultivator entered the lake, he immediately rushed toward the pavilion in the middle of the lake. However, other than the fact that his speed was relatively fast when he first entered, the people behind him clearly noticed that his speed had slowed down. The surface of the water began to ripple. The cultivators struggled with all their might, wanting to break free from everything and rush forward. These cultivators were fine when they first entered. However, after moving forward 50 meters, the difficulty of moving forward increased a lot. Most of the cultivators stopped at around 60 meters. One of them was not weak and reached 80 meters. However, he failed in the end. Lin Taxing was the first to arrive. He explained what had happened previously. Look, this place is at least 200 meters away from the pavilion in the middle of the lake. If you don't have enough means to deal with it, you have to seriously consider it. Chapter 5745. That's right. The area around the lake does not allow cultivators to fly at all. Once you enter the lake, it's very difficult for you to pop your head out. I noticed a cultivator who was in the process of moving forward. He realized that he could not withstand the metal attribute energy and wanted to turn back immediately. However, he did not make it in time and lost his life. Bewitching shook his head and sighed. This is a good opportunity, but no matter what, life is the most important thing. Moreover, we only know that the items here are very helpful to metal attribute cultivators. However, the issue of inheritance is still unknown. It may not be worth taking such a risk for such an item. We are well aware of just what kind of existence the ancient battlefield is. It is likely that the things that appear here are extraordinary. I will act according to my ability. When Xiren smiled faintly, his expression was relaxed, as though he did not take all of this to heart. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching both understood that Xiren was just pretending to be relaxed. The situation before them was too dangerous. After the cultivator exceeded 50 meters, it became very difficult for him to move forward. Streaks of blood spread out from the lake. He was obviously injured. "Come back quickly." The cultivator who knew the man quickly shouted. His face was filled with anxiety. The man under the water also felt that he could not move forward at all. He immediately turned around and wanted to return. However, the crowd realized that his struggle was getting more and more intense, and there were more and more bloody holes on his body. After a fierce struggle, he finally followed in the footsteps of the former. Seeing this, the crowd could not help but sigh. It was not easy to cultivate until now. However, in the blink of an eye, he lost his life. What's the situation with the pavilion in the middle of the lake? Is it that no one is allowed to get close at all? The metal attribute energy here is so strong. How can an ordinary person withstand it? I feel that it doesn't make sense at all. Maybe it's deliberately taking people's lives. I think everyone should give up. In such a short time, how many people have lost their lives because of this? It's not worth it at all. It's better to look for opportunities elsewhere. For a moment, many cultivators chose to give up. Although the treasure was important, no one was willing to lose their lives. After making a decisive decision, some cultivators chose to leave first. Obviously, they did not want to waste time here. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other. If it was before, they would have thought the same as everyone else. However, after entering the abandoned immortal forest, they realized how powerful the cultivators of the immortal domain were. They also understood that this was not an intentional attempt to take someone's life, but a test. However, the targets of the test should be cultivators from the immortal region, not cultivators from the upper realms. The difference in strength between the cultivators of the two planes was simply too great. Xiren and Shangwan Yingying naturally understood this point. They couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. They had only been in the abandoned immortal forest for a short period of time. If they had studied for a while longer and improved their understanding of the metal element, it wouldn't have been so difficult to pass this stage. Just as everyone was thinking about what to do, two familiar figures suddenly appeared in everyone's line of sight. Di Beichun, we meet again. Chapter 5746. Just by hearing these familiar voices, Bailey Hongzhuang already knew that they were Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou. However, they were not surprised that these two people appeared here. Hearing Di Beichun's indifferent voice, Jun Lingxuan chuckled. It's rare for us to reach a consensus on this point. Then we'll have to see who dies first before the other can be freed. Di Beichun turned his eyes, his dark and charming eyes revealing a cold and frightening brilliance. He did not like to take the initiative to find trouble with others, but the other party's existence had threatened his family, so he could only fight to the death. Looking at Di Beichun, Jun Lingxuan was shocked for no reason. He only felt that Di Beichun seemed to have changed a little after not seeing him for a while. When he met Di Beichun in the past, there was naturally no need to mention the enmity between them. Di Beichun also wanted to take his life, but this kind of ruthlessness and decisiveness from the heart was something that had never been seen before. At least he could clearly feel that Di Beichun's killing intent towards him was stronger than before. Then we'll have to rely on our own abilities. Jun Lingxuan calmed his inner emotions. In front of so many people, he could not show the slightest fear. After seeing Di Beichun and Jun Lingxuan's confrontation, the surrounding people secretly sighed in their hearts. The enmity between these two people was really getting deeper and deeper. Perhaps only one of them would be able to make it out of the ancient battlefield alive. Xiao Sou's eyes were tightly locked on Bailey Hongzhuang. This woman was her obstacle and the knot in her heart. Even though her master had once told her not to take this woman to heart, otherwise she would become a demon in her heart, but all that had happened in the past few years made it impossible for her to ignore all of this. Bailey Hongzhuang had even become her motivation to cultivate diligently. Whenever she had the slightest bit of slack, Bailey Hongzhuang's figure would appear in her mind, and she would grit her teeth and continue to cultivate. Only by killing Bailey Hongzhuang could she erase all of this humiliation. Bailey Hongzhuang also felt Xiao Sou's gaze. In fact, ever since she snatched the position of the Holy Maiden, Xiao Sou's gaze seemed to be filled with more hatred every time she appeared. It seemed that this woman really hated her to the core. Facing Xiao Sou and gnashing her teeth, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled like a flower. Naturally, she knew what Xiao Sou was thinking. However, thinking was one thing, being able to do it was another. She did not have any intention of underestimating her opponent. She knew that with Xu Yu's guidance, Xiao Sou and Jun Lingxuan's powers had increased very quickly. However, she did not belittle herself either. During this period of time, none of them had slacked off in their cultivation. She believed that even if they were to fight head-on, the other party would not be able to gain an advantage. Woman, can you not always look at my master with such a murderous gaze? Xiao stared at Xiao Sou with disgust. My eyes are about to fall out. Xiao Sou's expression stiffened and her face darkened. Shut up. Do you believe that I'll use a bamboo skewer to skewer you and cook you? As soon as he said this, Xiao immediately exploded. Just you? When the time comes, I'll cook you and eat you. Why don't we try it? Chapter 5747. Facing the flustered and exasperated Xiao Sou, Bailey Hongzhuang's face was as calm as still water, a stark contrast to her cloudy and unruffled appearance. However, the words that came out of her mouth were still tit for tat, without the slightest bit of concession. Your contracted beast is just like you, weak as hell. After saying that, Bailey Hongzhuang no longer paid any attention to Xiao Sou, turned her head, and continued to look at the mysterious and calm lake water. Obviously, now was not the time for them to fight. The pavilion in the middle of the lake was the most important. As for the real confrontation, there would be plenty of opportunities in the future. After suffering a setback, Xiao Sou was also very unconvinced and wanted to say a few more words, but was pulled back by Jun Lingxuan. The crowd saw that after Jun Lingxuan whispered a few words into Xiao Sou's ear, Xiao Sou nodded slightly, and even though her face was still filled with unwillingness, she still did not say anything. Xiao Sou really can't be compared to Bailey Hongzhuang now. The arrogance from before has been completely extinguished. That's right, when I saw Xiao Sou in the past, she was always the center of attention and no one dared to go against her. But now she is being suppressed by Bailey Hongzhuang everywhere. The wheel of fortune has really turned. Lower your voice. Don't be heard. We can't avoid trouble when the time comes. Even though the crowd's voices were very soft, but Xiao Sou could still vaguely hear some of it, and instantly the anger in her heart flourished. Lingxuan, why don't you let me continue to argue with her? Now, everyone is laughing at me. Looking at Xiao Sou's indignant look, Jun Lingxuan patted the back of her hand. Don't be angry. If we continue to make a fuss now, once we fight, wouldn't it be troublesome? There are so many people here. I just noticed that the number of cultivators from our clan doesn't seem to be as many as theirs, and we don't have the advantage. Moreover, have you forgotten Master's teachings? Only then did Xiao Sou regain her senses. Before leaving, she not only taught them the things they needed to pay attention to in order to break through, she also specifically reminded them that unless it was unavoidable, they should try their best not to fight with these two people. As of now, they did not have an absolute chance of winning. However, as long as they cultivated with their master for a long enough time, it would not be a problem for them to defeat the two of them in the future. Although it was very difficult to achieve this, they also understood in their hearts that what their master said had a certain degree of truth. It was all for their sake. I understand. Jun Lingxuan nodded slightly. Revenge is a dish best served cold. Once we break through to the Radiant Moon realm, it will be much easier to deal with them. Do you know what realm they are at now? Xiao Sou lowered her voice and asked. They definitely haven't broken through to the Radiant Moon realm. If they had, they would have attacked us long ago. Jun Lingxuan's expression was certain. Now that the enmity between the two parties was so thick that it could not be resolved, if the other party had enough confidence, they would not allow such a threat to exist. If Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen knew what they were thinking, they would definitely shake their heads in denial. It was not that they were unwilling to fight now, but they felt that Xiren's choice was more important. If they fought now, wouldn't it be troublesome? Actually, according to everyone's judgment, to enter the pavilion in the middle of the lake, it is not only cultivators with the metal attribute who can do it, but because of their attribute advantage, the difficulty will be reduced. Lin Taxing noticed the hesitation on everyone's faces and explained. Chapter 5748. Can other attributes work as well? Jiang Wenyan's eyes lit up. When he heard everyone's words, he thought that only cultivators of the metal attribute would have a chance, and felt that it was a pity. After all, It was not easy to find such a place in the ancient battlefield where there might be gains. After spending so much effort to come here, it would be too disappointing if there was no chance at all. Although it would be more difficult for cultivators of the non-metal attribute, there was still a chance of success. Ta Xing, do you have any plans to give it a try? Shangguan Yingying asked. Lin Ta Xing looked at the lake in front of him, and a trace of hesitation flashed across his face. In the end, he shook his head. Although I covet this treasure very much, according to the cultivators who have failed before, my chances of success should be very small. So I choose to give up. In the end, his voice became firm and his attitude was certain. He no longer hesitated. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. She had to admit that Lin Ta Xing was an extremely outstanding cultivator. In the Lin family, Lin Ta Xing was the most outstanding cultivator. If not for the fact that Di Xiaofeng had already been appointed as the young master, Lin Ta Xing would have been the best candidate for the position. Sometimes, giving up did not mean that one was cowardly. It meant that one had a clearer understanding of oneself. Beichun, don't you want to give it a try? Xiren raised his eyebrows. He had known Di Beichun for so many years, and he felt that it would not be Di Beichun's character to give up without giving it a try. This lake is very strange. If I fail, I can still come back. If I fail and can't come back, Di Beichun turned to look at Bailey Hongzhuang. The reason why he did not want to fight for it was because metal attribute items were of no help to him. As a cultivator of the darkness and light attributes, if the treasures in the pavilion were of these two attributes, then his thinking would be different. Jun Lingxuan heard Di Beichun's words and sneered inwardly. I didn't think that you would be afraid. Why don't you give it a try? Di Beichun asked. The famous young master Jun must be very confident. Why don't you try it first? Jun Lingxuan was slightly stunned, but he realized that everyone's eyes were focused on him. Di Beichun, don't try to provoke me like this. You don't want to do it yourself, but you want me to do it. Do you really think I'm stupid? Master, why are you wasting your breath on him? Xiaobai rolled her eyes. This guy just likes to kick people when they're down. When it comes to himself, he's just a coward. Isn't that so? Xiao Xuanzi agreed. Jun Lingxuan's face turned ashen. He was actually ridiculed by two contract beasts. Thinking of Di Beichun's reaction earlier, Jun Lingxuan suddenly had an idea, and his ashen face eased up. Di Beichun, why don't we try it together? Do you have the guts? As soon as these words came out, Xiao Sei Wu secretly applauded and quietly kicked the ball back to Di Beichun. The embarrassed party became Di Beichun. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. Even she was very afraid of such a risk. After noticing Jun Lingxuan's complacent look, Di Beichun narrowed his eyes dangerously. Okay, I promise you. Beichun. Seeing Di Beichun agree like this, Lin Ta Xing could not help but feel anxious. Chapter 5749. Di Beichun, you can't be impulsive. Jiang Wenyin couldn't help but speak out. He didn't expect Jun Lingxuan to play a trick at this time. It was really abominable. Di Beichun waved his hand, the corner of his mouth hooked up in a devilish smile. Jun Lingxuan has issued a challenge to me. If I don't accompany him, wouldn't I lose face for the Di family? As soon as these words came out, Lin Taxing and the others fell into silence. For a man, face was obviously not to be lost. What's more, it was not only his own face, but also the face of his family. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't say much. She understood that some things could be given up, but some things must be done. At this time, she couldn't let the young master of the Di family become a joke in the eyes of others. After seeing Di Beichun agree without hesitation, Jun Lingxuan's expression changed slightly. He wanted to see this guy's hesitant appearance and make him lose face, but he didn't expect this guy to be goaded into action and drag him into the water. He remembered that this wasn't the first time such a situation had happened. He really didn't understand. Didn't this guy say that he would give up before? Why did he suddenly change his mind? Was it possible that everything he said before was just to coax him into taking the bait? For a moment, Jun Lingxuan only felt that it wasn't him who was scheming against Di Beichun, but Di Beichun who was scheming against him. Lingxuan, look, so many people have died in the lake. I'm afraid it's very difficult. Xiao Shou couldn't help but worry. She and Jun Lingxuan were engaged. Although they hadn't officially married, in her heart, he was the man she had set her mind on. She really didn't want Jun Lingxuan to take such a risk in such a dangerous matter. However, Jun Lingxuan couldn't say anything. This hole was dug by him, and now he couldn't even jump out of it. Originally, I was still a little hesitant about whether I should try it or not. Since you want to go, then I'll go with you. Xiren patted Di Beichen's shoulder, his smile as bright as the sun, extremely open-minded. Shangguan Yingying nodded. Me too, I want to try too. Normally, it's too difficult to catch up to your strength. If I can get an opportunity here, I won't have to worry about this problem. Shangguan Yingying's face was filled with joy. No matter what, as a metal-type cultivator, as long as she could obtain something from the pavilion, her strength would definitely increase by quite a bit. Yingying, Xiren frowned. He didn't want Shangguan Yingying to take the risk. I know what you're thinking, but you don't have to say it out loud. I didn't stop you from making your decision, and you can't stop me either, Shangguan Yingying said with a serious smile. Xiren paused. He wanted to say something, but hesitated. In the end, he didn't say anything. Indeed, Yingying's current cultivation wasn't inferior to his. What right did he have to stop Yingying's decision? One more won't make much of a difference. Then I'll also participate. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. After everyone stood up one by one, she felt that the river water wasn't so scary anymore. Perhaps this was the power of friendship. No matter when, there would always be someone to accompany you. Jiang Wenyin could feel the deep friendship between Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three people, and couldn't help but feel touched. In his mind, he couldn't help but recall what Bailey Hongzhuang had said to him. Sure enough, her friendship was so admirable. Chapter 5750. Originally, everyone present was about to give up, but they suddenly realized that after Jun Lingxuan started this matter, Di Beichen and the others actually planned to give it a try. Immediately, they stopped in their tracks. It was rare to see a show, so everyone naturally would miss it. Moreover, even if they couldn't reach the pavilion, they still wanted to know what kind of treasure was in the center of the pavilion. After seeing the reaction of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, Jun Lingxuan couldn't help but sneer, but a feeling of jealousy rose in his heart for no reason. He mocked, "It's fine if you want to participate, but you're dragging others to die with you." Shangguan Yingying looked at Jun Lingxuan unconvinced. "This is something we're willing to do, so you don't have to worry about it. In my opinion, there are so many people around you, but it seems that no one is willing to accompany you." As Shangguan Yingying's voice fell, everyone couldn't help but look sideways. There were indeed many cultivators from the Jun family around. Originally, it wasn't a big deal that it wasn't mentioned. Everyone was just envious of the friendship between Di Beichen and the others. But now that it was mentioned, Jun Lingxuan undoubtedly looked quite lonely. Jun Lingxuan's expression was a little stiff, and the cultivators of the Jun family also wanted to say something, but stopped. They didn't want to let the young master lose face at this time. But with their current strength, entering the lake was equivalent to courting death. Just as the Jun family's disciples were about to risk their lives, Xiao Shou suddenly said, "Lingxuan, I'll accompany you." Everyone looked at Xiao Shou. For her to be able to stand up at this time, it was clear that she was sincere. Jun Lingxuan couldn't help but feel touched, and the cultivators of the Jun family were even happier. This proved that their young master didn't choose the wrong person. The other disciples aren't good at these things. If they rashly go in, they'll just lose their lives for nothing. We're not like some people who are willing to let their families take risks. Xiao Shou spoke up to ease the previous awkward situation. She believed that the gap between her and Bailey Hongzhuang had infinitely narrowed. Since Bailey Hongzhuang dared to go in, why wouldn't she dare? After everyone made up their minds, they no longer hesitated. After making some judgments in their hearts, they prepared to enter the lake. They slowly walked up to the lake. Even though they were already so close to it, they still couldn't feel the slightest bit of metal energy. It was as if the lake in front of them was just an ordinary lake. Everyone's heart was heavy. After entering, the slightest carelessness would cause them to lose their lives there. Jun Lingxuan cast a sidelong glance at Di Beichen's group. Suppressing the worry in his heart, he said, "Di Beichen, please." Together. The corners of Di Beichen's lips curled up slightly. His charming face was filled with his signature dazzling smile, without the slightest bit of nervousness or worry. If you find that you can't hold on any longer, retreat immediately. Di Beichen transmitted his voice to everyone. Based on the previous cultivators, if you can swim to a place where you can't resist, you still have a chance to swim back if you can move without hesitation. Naturally, he couldn't let everyone die with him. Although this was something that no one had done before, he felt that it was possible. Moreover, Xiren and the others had already trained their reaction speed. They would definitely be faster than the average person. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others quietly exchanged glances. They understood. Chapter 57-51. You're going to? Bailey Hongzhuang asked in surprise. Bali Yin Che chuckled. Sister, you and brother-in-law are going to try it. How can I not accompany you? Whether it was in the past or now, he had always been wherever Hongzhuang was. This had never changed. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was filled with warmth. Indeed, Yin-Che had always been with her. Now, Bali Yin-Che was her younger brother, her most beloved brother. Ling, who noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's touch gaze on her. She could not help but say faintly, "Anyway, we have a contract. If you die, I can't live either. Why don't we try it together?" Ling, you're always so straightforward. Xiren could not help but laugh. Ling was usually very serious. She rarely interrupted when others were talking. However, the words that came out her mouth made people not know whether to laugh or cry. She was really too straightforward. I like to speak the truth. Ling did not feel that there was anything wrong with what she said. Her face was calm and matter-of-factly. Even so, Bailey Hongzhuang was still touched. She knew that Ling was stubborn. Then let's go in. The next moment, everyone rushed into the lake together under the shocked gazes of the crowd. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the several figures in the lake. There was no doubt that this was the most likely attempt to succeed. Lin Hua and the practitioners of the Di family were all praying in their hearts. They only hoped that they would succeed. If they failed, the consequences would be unbearable. Lin Taxing clenched his fists. Di Beichen was the young master of the Di family. If he lost his life here, he really did not know how to face the head of the Di family when he returned. After entering the lake, Bailey Hongzhuang experienced the sharp metal attribute energy that everyone was talking about. The metal attribute had always been known for its sharpness. After entering the lake, she felt as if there were countless sword qi rushing towards her. The power of light was unleashed, forming a layer of armor on the surface of his body, resisting the power of metal. At the same time, she sped up and rushed forward. In this lake, there was no other energy other than the metal element. Once the elemental energy in one's body was exhausted, there was only one outcome: death. What a scary place. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed inwardly. It was no wonder that only metal-type cultivators could last a little longer here. It was because they could still absorb some elemental energy from the lake. After moving forward for a while, Bailey Hongzhuang found that the difficulty increased exponentially. Every step forward was extremely difficult. This feeling was similar to when he was climbing the stairway to heaven. The higher he went, the more difficult it was to advance. The sharp power had already pierced through the armor formed by her elemental energy. The metal attribute energy unceremoniously pierced through her skin, causing a heart-wrenching pain. This was the first time that she had felt this kind of elemental energy. It was far sharper than the elemental energy that she usually encountered. After piercing through her skin, the elemental energy even entered her body and wreaked havoc in her body, forcing her to divert her attention to control it. Once her meridians were severed, it would be really bad. On the shore, Bewitching and the others quickly approached the front as soon as they entered the lake. Chapter 57-52. 50 meters. Even after moving forward 50 meters, everyone's speed did not slow down too much. They were still moving forward steadily. 60 meters, 80 meters, 100 meters. As the group advanced further and further, everyone's hearts were in their throats. The distance from the shore to the pavilion in the middle of the lake was only 200 meters. They were already halfway there, and everyone was still advancing. If they could really succeed, everyone was looking forward to it. Young master, you can do it. Young master, you can do it. For a moment, the cultivators from the D family and the June family could not help but cheer for their family heads. This was not only for the treasures in the pavilion in the middle of the lake, but also a contest between the two young masters. Whoever won would have a lower status in the future. However, more cultivators could not help but sigh at the gap between them. I have to admit it, even if I don't want to. Previously, the most powerful cultivator had only advanced 80 meters, but now they have all advanced more than 100 meters. Of course, it's infuriating to compare oneself to others. Most of the cultivators who went in earlier were from the mercenary guild. How could their cultivation resources be compared to the young masters of the aristocratic families? Their strength is not something that ordinary people can compare to. You're right. Which young master of the aristocratic families is not a monster? 110 meters. 120 meters. At this moment, everyone's bodies were bleeding. Traces of blood floated in the lake. Even on the shore, everyone could feel the pain and effort of the people under the lake. Everyone's speed slowed down. At this point, they were almost at the limit of their efforts. Countless metal attribute forces were like sharp blades that constantly scraped their bodies, leaving scars wherever they passed. Even if they used all their skills to protect themselves, under such a dense number of sharp blades, their armor was extremely fragile. He felt as if he had rushed into a place full of sword chi, and all the power was trying to squeeze him out of this place. Among the crowd, Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou were the first to slow down. Bailey Hongzhuang, Deep Beichan, Bai Yin Che, and Ling gradually slowed down as well. From the perspective of the people on the shore, they could see that Di Beichin and the other three were slightly ahead of Xiao Sou and her companion, but it was only a meter away. Everyone seemed to be struggling. However, to everyone's surprise, Xiren and Shangwan Yingying were the fastest. Even if their speed was much slower than before, they still had the strength to move forward. It was clear that they were much more relaxed than Di Beichin and the others. Xiren and Yingying both have the metal attribute. Maybe they can succeed. Lin Taxing's eyes sparkled with expectation. He knew the strength of Xiren and Shangwan Yingying. Both of them were first-class geniuses, but Di Beichin and Bailey Hongzhuang usually overshadowed their limelight because they were too dazzling. However, he knew that they were also two outstanding people. Bailey Hongzhuang tried her best to resist. Even she could not help but feel that it was difficult to continue under such circumstances. However, when she noticed Xiren and Shangwan Yingying in front of her, she was very happy. Chapter 57-53. Even though they could already see the pavilion in the middle of the lake in front of them, Bailey Hongzhuang had a feeling that they would not be able to reach it. However, since they were already here, it was not a bad idea to try and see how far they could go before their lives were in danger. Both Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou gritted their teeth and persevered. The pain was indescribable. If they could, they would have given up long ago. However, Di Beichin and the rest were still moving forward. If they gave up just like that, it would be too embarrassing. Therefore, the two of them gritted their teeth and persevered with all their might. They were geniuses who were not weaker than their opponents. How could they give up so easily? Xiren and Shangwan Yingying found it very difficult to move forward, as they were of the metal attribute. In this lake full of elemental energy, their hearts were clearer than usual. When they were cultivating in the past, they did not have much understanding of the metal attribute. Now, they suddenly understood the various wonderful uses of the metal attribute. The energy in their bodies unconsciously began to imitate these blade-like energies. There were even sounds of metal clashing around them. Since these energies could turn into blades, their own energies could do the same. The two of them were not familiar with it in the beginning. Later on, they slowly grasped some tricks. Although it was very difficult to move forward, they could still feel that they were moving forward bit by bit. Even if it was just a little, it was enough to make them happy. "Ying, you can do it," Xiren said with difficulty. "We'll definitely succeed." Shangguan Ying gritted her teeth. Her gaze was determined. They had to prove themselves with their abilities. 150 meters. 160 meters. As the group got closer to the pavilion in the middle of the lake, the cultivators on the shore fell silent. Their gazes were fixed on the few figures. This time, they should really succeed. 180 meters. Now, the blade had solidified, and everyone had turned into a bloodied man. Piercing pain came from all over their bodies. Everyone only had one feeling, and that was pain. However, they could no longer feel where the pain came from. Look, Jun Lingxuan and Xiao So seemed to have given up. As the voice of a cultivator fell, everyone turned to look. As expected, Jun Lingxuan and Xiao So had stopped moving forward. Obviously, he was more than a meter behind Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Although he couldn't see their expressions, he could guess that they must have given it their all. At that moment, no one mocked them, because to be able to reach such a distance, they had already surpassed the vast majority of people. At the very least, the cultivators on the shore had basically reached this stage, so they had no right to mock the other party. After reaching 180 meters, Bailey Hongzhuang tried to move forward again. Suddenly, a tremor spread from the bottom of her heart. That was the fear of death, the despair that came from the bottom of his heart. Bailey Hongzhuang retreated without hesitation the moment she sensed it. She completely gave up on the idea of moving forward because she could feel that if she moved forward a bit, even if it was just a centimeter, she would be killed by this power. Chapter 57-54. It's too scary. Bailey Hongzhuang felt a lingering fear. This was the first time she felt so clearly on the edge of life and death. Even if she didn't move forward, she knew very well that if she took a step forward, she would definitely lose her life. When everyone noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly started to retreat, they couldn't help but be stunned. They were only 20 meters away, but Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly gave up. It seems that Bailey Hongzhuang shouldn't be able to move forward anymore. The closer we are to the pavilion in the middle of the lake, the greater the pressure. Don't think that it's only 20 meters. It's actually as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Just as everyone was guessing, they suddenly noticed that Bewitching and the rest had also started to retreat. Linger, Bai Lianshe, and Jiang Wenyan all remembered what Bewitching had said earlier. When they felt that something was wrong, they immediately retreated. Humans have an instinctive sense of danger, let alone them who often wander on the edge of life and death. Jun Lingxuan and Xiao So were already in extreme pain. They couldn't even move forward. When they noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest had started to retreat, they also retreated without hesitation. As long as they could escape from this pain, they were willing to do anything. Among everyone, only Xiren and Shangguan Ying persisted in moving forward. Even if the speed was very slow, no one lost their patience because they knew all too well how difficult it was. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest gave up after sensing the fatal danger. The process of retreating was also very torturous. They simply couldn't go back quickly. They were still in the midst of endless blades. Their physical condition was no longer the same as when they were moving forward, so retreating was also incomparably difficult. In the process of retreating, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood why those cultivators had lost their lives. They must have not given up after sensing the fatal danger. Once they tried to move forward, they would be doomed eternally. Ling Sun, are we going to die here? Xiao So's voice was extremely weak. Even if she turned back, she was already seriously injured. Looking at the distance behind her, she only felt that it was too difficult. Perhaps he wouldn't even be able to hold on until he reached the shore. Jun Lingshuan's face was covered with bloodstains, but his voice was very firm. Seiwu, believe in yourself. We will be able to return to the shore. Don't give up. All right. Everyone noticed that the speed at which Bailey Hongzhuang and her party were returning was just as slow. They were not much faster than the speed at which Ziren and his party were advancing. I'm afraid they've suffered heavy injuries and exhausted their essence energy. I wonder if they can make it back? A cultivator voiced his conjecture. He did not think that it would be easy for them to return this time. It's really not worth it if you lose your life. In my opinion, they will have a hard time before 80 meters. Everyone agreed with this judgment because before the 80-meter mark, everyone had advanced very smoothly. But after the 80-meter mark, it was much more difficult, and the difficulty of returning was naturally the same. I think you guys shouldn't worry about this. Think about how those cultivators couldn't even come back. At least they can still try to come back. As soon as these words came out, everyone was stunned and suddenly felt that the situation was indeed like this. Just this point alone was enough to prove the disparity between them. Chapter 57-55. Ziren and Shangguan Yingying had never felt that a distance of 20 meters was so far away. The price they had to pay for every step forward made them fearful. At this point, there was only one kind of willpower that supported them to continue forward. They had no way out. This last bit of distance had almost exhausted their elemental energy. Even if they turned back now, they would definitely die in the lake. Therefore, their only chance of survival was to continue forward and reach the pavilion. Countless thoughts appeared in their minds. In the end, they still focused on sensing the metal element. I can't take it anymore. When they were only a thin line away from the pavilion, Ziren felt that he had seen death. His body had no strength left. He didn't even have the strength to struggle. Oh no, just a little bit more. Ziren and the others can't hold on anymore. Perhaps it was due to the connection between brothers. Di Beichun turned his head and noticed Ziren's situation. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang paused. When she thought of Ziren and Shangguan Yingying leaving them, she couldn't imagine the scene. Beichun, lend me a hand. Bailey Hongzhuang transmitted her voice. In the next moment, a chant came out of Bailey Hongzhuang's mouth. A kind of invigorating energy spread from the bottom of the lake. Even with so much metal elemental energy, it couldn't stop it. Di Beichun placed one hand on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Light elemental energy poured into Bailey Hongzhuang's body. At this point, they were both at the end of their rope. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't have much elemental energy left in her body. It could only be done by the two of them working together. Rich light elemental energy exploded onto the lake. It was like a resplendent lamp, suddenly illuminating the lake. Everyone was attracted by this light. After hearing the mysterious chant, they all understood Bailey Hongzhuang's intention. She's helping Ziren and Shangguan Yingying. She's actually helping them when she can't even protect her own life. For a time, everyone present could not help but be moved. According to their judgment, with Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's strength, even if it would be extremely difficult for them to return, the possibility of them surviving was still not small. However, now that they had exhausted their strength, it would be impossible for them to return. Under such circumstances, they still made such a decision. Were they not afraid of death? This thought flashed through everyone's mind, but everyone understood that it was not that they were not afraid of death, but that they were willing to die for their friends. After noticing Bailey Hongzhuang's actions, Ling, and Bai Li Yinshe followed Di Beichun and channeled their elemental energy into her body. Their chanting gradually became louder and louder, and the amplification effect also became apparent. When Ziren and Shangguan Yingying could not hold on any longer. Even though there was only a thin line between them, they could only give up in despair no matter how unwilling they were. However, at this moment, a wave of warm energy suddenly came, injecting life into their exhausted bodies. Even without turning their heads, they knew that this was all done for them by Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching. When Xiren roared and used all his strength to climb up to the pavilion in the middle of the lake. Shangguan, Yingying, and Xiren climbed up to the pavilion in the middle of the lake almost at the same time. However, at the moment they rushed out of the water, tears had already blurred their vision and merged with the lake water, bringing with them a bitter taste. Chapter 57-56. Even though they were in the lake, they could still hear the conversations of the cultivators on the shore. They understood the situation of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others very well. In a situation where they could not even protect themselves, Bailey Hongzhuang still gave up all her power to help them. How were they going to leave the lake alive? After Jiang Wenyan felt the increase in power from Bailey Hongzhuang's chanting, he felt that his exhausted body had gained a little more strength. However, he was not in the mood to become stronger as soon as possible. Instead, he was shocked by the friendship between Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. He also had many friends, but life and death friends were pitifully few. Everyone around him valued their own interests the most. They were willing to sacrifice their lives for their friends. That was just empty talk. Other than family, it was impossible for ordinary friends to do this. But now he actually saw it. Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sowu were also shocked. A thought flashed through their minds. Bailey Hongzhuang must be crazy. In order to help Xiren and Shangwaning, she was willing to sacrifice her own life. Wasn't this seeking death? However, this was also good. Originally, the two of them wanted to get rid of Bailey Hongzhuang. But now that Bailey Hongzhuang had fallen, it was equivalent to helping them solve a big problem. Based on the relationship between Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang, one could imagine the blow that Bewitching had suffered from Bailey Hongzhuang's death. When the time comes, all the advantages would belong to them. After when Xiren and Shangguan Yingying walked to the pavilion in the middle of the lake, all the pressure immediately dissipated. The most peculiar thing was that the wounds on their bodies had healed in a short period of time. The people on the shore were also shocked when they saw this. This pavilion is really not simple. Their faces were still full of scars, and now they have disappeared. Needless to say, the treasures in the pavilion in the middle of the lake are not simple. One and Xiren are really lucky. When Xiren and Shangguan Yingying couldn't care less about the things in the pavilion, they immediately looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others in the lake. After they succeeded, Bailey Hongzhuang also stopped chanting. Bewitching and the others retracted their powers one after another. However, they were already heavily injured, and the origin energy in their bodies had been greatly depleted. Their situation had undoubtedly worsened. No one felt that it was not worth it. After knowing that when Xiren and the other had succeeded, everyone breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. Xiren, what about Hongzhuang and the others? Shangguan Yingying's eyes turned red. She knew that this power did not only belong to Bailey Hongzhuang, but also to Bewitching and the others. It was so dangerous underwater. If they did not return as soon as possible, they would not be able to return. Damn it! When Xiren could not help but curse out loud. This feeling made him feel like he was going to collapse and go crazy. He had never been so flustered before. All the thoughts flashed through his mind. Worry, nervousness, fear. All the calmness and rationality seemed to have disappeared at this moment. No matter how hard he tried to calm himself down, he just couldn't do it. He did not know what to do to help the Beichen. He was afraid that everyone would lose their lives because of this. If that was the case, he would rather die himself. Suddenly, a thought appeared in Xiren's mind. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.